Welcome back to the channel. This is Crusader Shorts and today I've got a huge video for you. Now I've been wanting to make this for a very long time, and in this video I'll discuss what I'd change about WoW if I was in charge of it or in a position of influence or authority. Unfortunately I don't work for and I'm not affiliated with Blizzard, but I still have an almost never ending list of ideas for the game which they may find beneficial and that you might, find interesting in listening to. So this video will most likely be extremely long, but I have so many interesting ideas to share with you, so I guess we'll just get straight into them. The first idea I've had, and I've had for a very long time, is the idea of guild belts. Now, I've watched some other videos and people have suggested a similar thing to me. I don't think they've got the exact same idea as me, but I've heard some people suggest like guilds owning zeppelins. Well, basically I'm talking about guilds owning their own ships that they can sail around in. So the boats would only be allowed to be owned one per guild, and the guild would have to earn it by some sort of means, and it'd depend on either your achievements or you'd have to unlock the guild boat as to not, get people making a new guild just to clutter the seas with boats and such. But they'd be large type of galleon boats, and they'd use this map as a type of compass. So one person such as the guild officer would sail the ship or select a destination as an alternative, and it would smoothly sail across a path through the sea to that location. The ships would be able to be parked in capital cities in docks, and each zone such as Northrend and the Broken Isles would each have one large dock for guild ships. However, mainlands such as Eastern Kingdoms would have multiple docks for guilds to park their ships. Now the guild ships would be a really cool way to get guild members interacting with each other, making it sort of social and being another hub with multiple players in rather than you just sitting in your garrison. So inside the ships there would be areas for professions such as smelting, along with anvils, and minigames such as chess for players to do with each other, along with vanity areas like a bar to buy drinks and assorted vanity items of that kind. Now another big idea I have is basically based upon the idea of alts running multiple instances. Now if you've been a mount farmer like me, this is a very annoying thing. So the idea is basically to have an item which would be learnt through a quest line, and it'd offer a new quest each expansion to unlock instances. So it'd be like it'd allow you to teleport to instances in the form of a teleport stone, and it'd allow you to teleport to raids and dungeons of previous expansions. So this would be account bound and only have to be unlocked via a main character. So if you played on your main character rather than an alt, you could do all the quests on that and it'd unlock all the instances to teleport to on your other characters. It would require completing each instance on normal difficulty to unlock the ability to teleport to it on the stone. This would mean players would no longer have to fly each individual alt character to an instance to farm, but would still allow some balance by making the player earn the item and the teleports and add a new thing to unlock and work towards. So basically it'd be a big teleport stone, and you'd be able to select which instance you want to teleport to. So if I wanted to farm Black Temple on 2 rogues and earn the glaives, then I could literally run Black Temple on normal difficulty and maybe complete a quest to unlock that on the teleport stone, and it'd maybe be an item that was in the toy box which had no cooldown, so you could select it, it'd come up with a menu, and each entry would say, first of all, dungeons, raids. You'd click on raids and then select Black Temple if you've unlocked it, and that would teleport you to the entrance of Black Temple. Then you could enter and run your raid. So instead of having to fly around to do multiple runs, if you do the quest lines and do them on normal, you'd unlock them. So it just makes alts easier to farm things rather than just sitting outside one raid, and it increases productivity each week because you can do multiple things rather than just doing one because you can't be bothered to fly to it. Now, some people may argue this is for lazy people and may remove the aspect of flying, but first of all you have to unlock it for a start, so it's something to work towards, and you might not even want to do that or teleport to it, so you have the choice as well. So that's another idea I had. My next idea is regarding cross-realm zones, which is short, well, CRZ is short for cross-realm zones. So remove cross-realm zones in certain areas and reduce number of servers to allow extremely difficult mounts such as Time Lost Proto-Drake to be less difficult, as cross-realm zones make them even harder to farm now. So originally back in Cataclysm I'd farm, stuff like Wrath of the Lich King mounts, more specifically Time Lost Proto-Drake, which looks really nice in my opinion, but once they started adding cross-realm zones to areas like this, it meant that the mounts which already took ages to spawn and were hard to farm would be less you know, more scarce, because there'd be more players farming it from different realms, so it wouldn't just be your realm. So it would be nice to remove these. Back in Cataclysm and Wrath, I knew people from my server as well, so this is talking about cross-realm zones and capitals and areas such as this. So back in Cataclysm and Wrath, I knew people from my server, and I interacted with them daily, so I knew maybe 2 or 3 people quite well. I'd literally just seen them around Orgrimmar, started talking to them, and I actually knew these people. But now that there's more cross-realm zones in most recent expansions, players I see that I don't know in real life or I'm not friends with are merely faces, and I don't tend to interact with them as much as I wouldn't see them a lot. So removing cross-realm zones and just reducing the amounts of servers depending on the player base, or you know, might be more beneficial, because cross-realm zones are really nice, but first of all, you can't trade with players in these zones regardless, and it just means that it's not as tight-knit as a server, because you don't know people off your server. And it was a very good experience, in my opinion anyway, to, you know a small group of players and everyone knows each other in Orgrimmar. So that's just my opinion, but I think cross-realm zones could still be very beneficial in certain areas, such as PvP areas and maybe the Molten Front and certain daily areas. But for mounts such as Time Lost and Aeonax, which are really hard to unlock already, and capital cities such as Orgrimmar and Stormwind, Dalaran, etc., cross-realm zones may be more problematic than being the solution. And reducing the actual realms and offering free transfers to certain realms may actually increase the amounts of players on each realm anyway, so it might fix that problem. But like I keep saying, that's just my opinion, and it could go both ways, I guess. Another aspect which I'd improve if I was in charge of the game would be old zones and their storylines. So I'd rework old zones and more specifically their storylines. I'm not sure if I'd improve the graphics of old zones, because some people like classic content, but I'd probably offer some sort of poll or community vote to see if people, you know, want to rework the looks of all the models and areas. Not sort of like a Cataclysm event where it sunders the world or anything like that, but more like improve the graphics of buildings. I'd probably do that as a vote, because some people might enjoy the classic look. But yeah, so I'd rework old storylines based upon current events. Now they've done this in certain areas, such as like since Cataclysm and stuff like that, but I'd do this to prevent boredom of doing the same zones and promote questing once more as a route, rather than solely just dungeon spamming while leveling. So certain old zones like Ghostlands, Valley of Trials, everything like that, I'd completely rework them, and I'd do it every few expansions, maybe every 2 or 3 expansions, just to add more uniqueness and make, you know, when you make multiple alts in certain areas, such as if I made 2 orcs or 3 orcs, I'd get really sick of the same starting zone, so I'd keep trying to switch it up or add multiple different options to do. I know they've reworked Sen'jin Village due to certain events and stuff like that. Not Sen'jin Village, the islands around it. But I'd do this for all starting zones, and I'd probably improve the models and visual feel of it if players actually did want that to happen. Now that I would have the storyline and questing aspect out of the way, and have that as an option for players to just quest, I'd also add more dungeons for old school levels. So when you're very low in level, you unlock new dungeons quite quickly, and each dungeon has more quests, so you can level quicker. But eventually you get to the stage where you do the same dungeons. Now, before expansions, you know, you do, I think Stratholme is a dungeon you do a lot, Dire Maul, things like that. So I'd add multiple new dungeons, which would be lore friendly, and maybe try and centre them around original classic factions and stuff, and make it so there's more dungeons to do, and I'd add quests in them all, like the dungeons which are currently available. And that means there'd be a lot more dungeons to do, from level to level, and people would get less bored of doing the same old dungeon. Although this is kind of the case in Warlords, where a lot of people would get the what's that dungeon called? They get Iron Docks a lot as well, and the Ogre Cavern dungeon. You know, I'd do it more for low levels as well, because that would be quite nice. Now, if I wasn't to disable the garrisons fully, I would implement a new system in the garrison in which followers collect the goods such as ores and herbs for the player. So now garrisons are sort of, I wouldn't say they're getting eradicated, but now that they're sort of deprecated, they're a bit old, Going back to your garrison daily and literally just mining and herbing the things yourself can get a bit tiresome, and I know people didn't really want things automated, and I have a solution for that later in the video for another idea I have. But now that garrisons are a thing and we can't really reverse that, most people, you know, they like to do garrison missions themselves rather than send followers on them, but there's always those ores and herbs which you've done hundreds of times and you don't want to collect them. So maybe if there was something you could work towards, like a garrison follower or some sort of special companion that would go around and collect the herbs for you, or the follower which you assign to the actual building that does work orders for you could actually, well, that speeds up work orders for you, could actually collect them and put them in a separate crate. So these would be, such as the ore being mined by a follower, they would be in a separate crate next to the the ones that you do in work orders. So everything would be collected. You'd go collect your ores, put them in a work order, and then you'd come back and collect them. So it's more automated, but since now that it's older content, you're going to do the content anyway. It doesn't make it any more OP, it just automates it a bit if you still want to go back to that content. So I've never really been a massive role player, but I have tested it out a few times, and I have used role-playing add-ons just to test role-playing out. So I think I joined the Argent Dawn server once, but I don't currently play on that and I don't really RP. But for players who do RP, the only solution really is to download an add-on if they want to, you know, experience character backstories and improve the role-playing experience. So what I'd do is I'd implement a vanilla-based roleplay UI system, and this would basically just be a roleplay visual system. So it'd allow players on roleplay servers to improve their experience without the use of add-ons. So it'd allow new players also to immerse themselves in the roleplay experience, because if they don't know how to download add-ons, or if they're young or they don't know what they're doing, having a vanilla system in there which is already in the game for you would be quite nice. And also it would be good because it would be implemented in the game and all roleplayer servers would have it. So it'd only be enabled on roleplay servers, and all role-playing players would actually be able to use this. So everybody would have a backstory, everybody would learn how to RP on the server and not ruin anybody's experience, and it'd just be a really nice addition for people who RP and just want to have fun on the game. I'd also remove looking for aid or LFR, or if I didn't remove it, I'd increase the difficulty of some sorts and try and scale the other difficulties of raiding up to meet this sort of standard. So there's a lot of players in LFR who literally just AFK and sit there and think, you know, the top DPS will clear these bosses for me and then I'll get the loot. I can literally stand there, press one spell or auto attack and they'll kill the boss for me. And sometimes this can be the case and they get away with it, but most of the time the boss dies, the boss doesn't die, sorry, and it ends in a wipe, and this happens multiple times. Usually after 2 wipes, these AFKers will, you know, start actually playing because they know they can't just automate it and tab out and get the loot. But it's a big problem. So I'd implement some sort of system that would kick slackers or AFKers for doing this, so that you'd have proper parties, because even though LFR can be a bit bland, you still want players who try and you want to do good DPS. I'd also try and increase the difficulty as a means to make it more interesting, but if I did remove LFR, then I'd make it so, you know, normal raids are a bit more easily accessible, but players who join normal raids will have a better experience, of course. My next idea is based on XP rates. So like unofficial servers, or private servers as they're called, I have watched videos of these types of servers, and as I'm aware, I believe they have XP rates that you can switch between. So to my understanding, on certain servers you can actually talk to an NPC and it will allow you to have maybe 3% increased XP, 5%, 10%, and you can select your rate at which your level. I think this would be a great thing to add to live servers, and this would only be enabled once you've reached max level on one character or multiple characters. And it'd allow people who want to make ults to level at a quicker rate. So if they've done it on certain characters and they've reached max level, it'd unlock this NPC. Well, you can actually talk to them if you've done that, and you can increase your XP rate. This doesn't affect Heirloom's XP bonus, so it would coincide with it. So if you had maybe 30% increased XP from Heirlooms, and you selected maybe 10 or 15% on the NPC, then you'd, you know, just level at a faster rate, and it'd be a solution for people who really need to level up ults for for guild purposes, if they need healer leveling or something like that, and especially for people who can't afford a level 100 boost. Now, the leveling would be really quick, in fact, but it still wouldn't be an instant solution, so people would still purchase the boosts from the store, so Blizzard won't really be losing the money, but it'd allow people to level more alts and enjoy the leveling process more, and reach the max level quickly, because there's certain players who really want to just enjoy leveling, but others where the guild really needs a max level character. They may not have the money, or they may want to just enjoy leveling but do it quickly, or spam dungeons and do it quickly, so this may be a solution. So yeah, I think that'd be a really good addition, but you'd have to work towards it, so you'd have to have characters at max level already, legitimately leveled, so that you'd unlock this. It wouldn't be available to new players, so they could just speed through the story. It'd have to be available to veterans only. Another idea would be to add more class-specific storylines, so this would be similar to the Green Fire quest line. These would perhaps unlock an individual set for transmog for each class, or, you know, add a special useful item that may change the spell's visuals in some way, like the Green Fire quest line did for Warlocks. So, the Green Fire quest line changed Warlock spells to be green like Fel Magic, and also changed the mount visuals. So adding this to a different class would be really cool. I'm not sure what they'd specifically add for spell appearances, but maybe they could unlock something else, or add some really lore immersive specific quest line for each class, and I think that just adds something to do, and also just add so much bulk to the actual lore of the game. It'd just be really immersive for each class to play, and it'd feel as if the person was actually getting more used to the class and involved with their particular class more as well. Now, the next idea may be slightly controversial, and this is linked with garrisons, but also with the new solution to them, rather than class halls also, which I haven't experienced yet, and I think class halls will be great, but this is also a different idea. So, add a personal player housing system, which is more unique than garrisons, which is updated with each expansion, rather than a different hub, i.e. the garrison than class halls. The player housing would have similar aspects from both, allowing you to display trophies from completed raids and achievements from all expansion content from the game, view your bank, and have teleports to the capital cities. The player housing would be upgradable based upon different aspects, and each expansion would increase the size and features available. For an example, low level players might have a small house, and eventually by the end of Legion, for an example, they would have a stronghold. Rather than send out followers to do your dirty work for you as you did for quest givers previously, you could perform the missions yourself, and the followers would be there to help you, and basically just be companions in the quests. I would remove the garrisons. If I wasn't to implement some sort of system where they collect all of the goods for you, I would probably just remove the garrisons, and move the content over to the new player housing system which I previously described. However, I would implement player houses into a new area that would be added in the faction capital cities. These wouldn't be the only expansion houses you'd be able to get. You'd be able to get strongholds in different continents or areas, but the capital city ones would allow players to own their own houses in the capitals and would phase them in when they enter them. This also means when they leave the houses, they would enter the city, allowing for social interactions rather than being isolated in some random part of the world. Bigger non-capital houses such as strongholds in different continents would still allow for the use of trade chat and general chat to interact with other players, and also have teleports to the capitals so that you could still be social and go to the capital cities. Now, I'm aware that garrisons did actually have these teleports. You could teleport to Ashran, etc., but you know, enabling the different chats, and maybe the stronghold versions would allow players to phase in or something of the sort, but it increased social interactivity nonetheless, and the capital city houses would probably be the best. I would also make old legendaries still viable in some way. So most legendaries are collected for vanity reasons, but after that they're no longer useful, like the Glaives of Azzinoth for an example. These legendaries should be able to be used for either transmogrification, or coinciding with our other idea on player housing, should be able to temporarily be given to followers to increase their proficiency when they help you with certain missions. Now, as I described earlier, these missions wouldn't be just sending your followers out to do them. They'd be missions on a command table sort of thing, like the Garrison, but when you click on a mission, you'd literally be teleported and phased into the instance yourself. So you'd do the mission, and the followers would aid you rather than actually doing it for you and coming back and just giving you the goods. So this would be a great way to implement legendaries, and they perhaps scale with the system. So when they do missions with you, the weapon gets XP and they can use it at a higher level. So something like Thunder Fury, or Doomhammer, which is actually an artifact weapon. But you know, more importantly, legendaries like the Glaives or Thunder Fury could be used on followers. They wouldn't just be useless for vanity reasons, etc. And it'd add a new reason to actually use legendaries. I would also make the Blizzard store services more affordable and convenient. For an example, I've been in the position multiple times of friends transferring servers and having to re-level the same classes multiple times. However, faction changing or server transferring multiple characters is very expensive. I'd implement a service which would be much cheaper and allow you to transfer or faction change multiple characters not at a much cheaper value price. This would allow you to bulk transfer characters, which would be a fair price but more affordable, as there isn't really any packages which allow for multiple characters to be transferred rather than individually paying a high amount per character, and this would hopefully solve the solution. To also promote people dungeoning and raiding in groups, I try and offer more rewards to promote the social behaviour of this aspect. So, as there's satchels for tanks and healers, call to arms when there's not many of that role performing that certain instance, I just give you a reward like a lockbox which has a random drop in it for completing each type of dungeon. Now at low levels this would maybe just give you some gold or silver, and at high levels it might unlock some mount or a piece of gear. Probably not gear because there's so many different ways to unlock gear, but probably some sort of gold or a random mount or companion in it, just to try and increase the social interactivity and try and increase the amount of players who actually do instances so the call to arms isn't really needed, but I'd still leave the call to arms system in. I'd also implement a voice chat system for guilds. I say only guilds in order to prevent microphone spamming in capital cities, which would definitely ruin the game. Now I've seen games like this, like Aftermath, which I played before, where there's people literally spamming in the hub at the start of the game, so I wouldn't want global chat, I just want voice chat for guilds or parties. So it would either be in the form of implementing TeamSpeak into the UI, or adding a new system that would integrate into a guild zone, such as the boat, as well as instances or a guild group, such as raids. I'd also allow the voice chat system to be used in the party if enabled by the group leader, so they could also be used for parties rather than just guilds alone. This would allow more social aspects whilst questing and meeting new people. I'd also improve character customization options when creating character. These would include small changes, such as enabling the brown skin orcs as well as pale or grey skin orcs. When selected, these orcs would open to a new opening cinematic, explaining how orcs of Draenor allied with the Horde after Warlords of Draenor events, and why you're on Azeroth to make it lore friendly. I would also add more races to the game over time, of course, which is a thing that is already happening, although there are certain races I would add that would be playable. These would include Naga, Ogres, Nightborn, Murlocs, Centaurs, Dryads, Ethereals and Viacle. These are most likely the final races I would add, as they are a large amount of races to add to the game, of course. Now, some people might laugh at adding Murlocs, but I've heard multiple people actually have this same idea. It's on the WoW wiki for an example, and I think Nobble87 actually thought of this idea as well. And I think Murlocs are a nice idea to add, like just as a vanity aspect, and people have always wanted to play the race, so it'd be quite a novelty thing to add, and I think there'd be a way to fit them into the game, like some sort of storyline, perhaps. So that'd be nice to see as a race. And of course, I did have some other ideas like Eredar, but these are very similar in the form to Draenei, and also I'm not sure how, you know, Burning Legion Eredar would actually be a race in the game. So because of this, I have left out certain ideas, but those sort of races I've explained could be implemented into the game and be lore friendly. So they're my race ideas. I'd also make the titles in the game actually have meaning. Now, some of these titles do actually have meaning in the game. However, each title earned would be noticed by NPCs of your player house or stronghold, or in the capital cities. This would only work on the title applied by the player, of course, as to, you know, prevent conflict of certain titles you actually own on your character. So if you were, for an example, Darkspear Revolutionary, all trolls would cheer or revere you, and maybe you'd get a reduction in goods from all Darkspear troll vendors, or something in the sort. So By reduction in goods, I mean the goods that they sell would be cheaper to you, and you'd have, you know, some sort of perk because of this title. So it adds another incentive to earn titles rather than just displaying the title to a player, because nowadays I don't really see people appreciating certain titles people actually have on their characters. So adding another perk to owning these titles is also a really nice addition in my opinion. The next idea, which I believe is a great idea, is actually from the Lazy Peon, and because of this I give the Lazy Peon credit for the idea, and I thought I'd include it in the video because it's really cool. So in my representation of this idea, I believe the casino would be a goblin casino or a gnome casino of sorts, and it'd be in an area of each capital city, so Stormwind and probably Orgrimmar. You don't really want to include a casino in every single capital, so it'd probably be best to just put it in these. Also to allow these two capitals to remain relevant and viable, rather than just current capitals such as, well, not capitals, but current faction hubs such as Dalaran, etc., being the main city of Legion, for an example. So these would be run by goblins or gnomes, who would be dressed in your typical banker type clothes. You would be able to gamble money and play mini-games with your gold as a means to make more gold or lose gold as a gold sink, and add something else to do in capital cities for a pastime. I would increase the level cap for non-subscriber players to level 60. With the current level cap being 100 and soon to be 110 at the time of making this video, I would allow free-to-play players to play until level 60 and experience almost full classic content to get a taste for the game. This would immerse them fully in the game and make them more likely to become long-time players and subscribe. I've had friends in the past who have played until level 20, but since it was either too quick or they didn't experience many zones, they didn't really feel any commitment to keep playing. So I believe increasing the level cap will allow them to have a taste of enough content but not too much, and maybe give them an incentive to actually keep playing the game and possibly subscribe. Although a taxing and most likely expensive implementation to the game, I would make the questing system more immersive in comparison to the system that Star Wars The Old Republic offers. Now, people have varying ideas on this, or variations of their own ideas on this, but some people think it's positive and some people thought it was negative. Some people think that the Old Republic's downfall was the over-immersion in questing, whilst I believe it was a great aspect of the game, and I honestly enjoyed the game because of the questing experience in it. So it wasn't something I wanted to rush to max level, I was just enjoying it all the way through. So the Old Republic offers an immersive questing experience, so putting something like this in WoW would be a great benefit. So you'd be able to select options via quest dialogue which would affect your morality or something of a similar type that affects your relations with certain factions, and possibly these would be new factions just added to sort of play with the system. So you'd perhaps be rewarded by a particular new faction for either acting mercilessly or being heroic or selecting positive options. So a certain faction would be friendly with you if you selected negative options on certain quests, and some factions might be friendly to you. So this is a great thing to add, and I don't think it'd be good to make this affect existing factions where people have had to grind reputation for. Maybe this would just be for factions in the future which are being added, and it just add more immersion to quests, and also add more dialogue in the form of actual voice acting to pre-existing quests that are more important, and add options for the player to feel more immersed in the actual story as well. The next thing which I have as an idea would be to make the class-specific mounts, such as the Paladins and Warlock mounts, as well as the Demon Hunter and Death Knight mounts, and further hero class mounts, to be customizable, allowing players to change the colour of the mount's armour, the fire colour on the Warlock mounts, and allow for unlocking more vanity appearances to make their mounts more unique. Although the Green Fire quest affects the Warlock mounts, would be unavailable and not be unlocked until you complete the Green Fire quest line, as this currently changes them anyway. What I mean by this is the Green Fire quest line changes the flame look of your spells and also your Warlock mount to be green. So I wouldn't really enable the Green Fire to be used to customize your mount. You'd have to unlock it through this quest still to make it viable. This would tackle the struggle for individuality and the implementation of the account-wide mount system, which makes it tough to be on a personal or unique mount ever since the Pandaria implementation of cross-account mounts. I would also add a large arena, which would be in seasons similar to the Brawlers Guild and have an appearance similar to the Nagrand Arena. In this arena, players would battle it out in teams of 1v1, 2v2 and 3v3 to earn rewards. In this arena, players in capital cities would be able to enter the arena and select which match to spectate. They would then be phased into the crowd which stands above to watch the duels. Also in turn, PvP players participating would still gain arena points via this method and increase their arena rating. I would continue to add more mounts as drops to dungeons. Recently there have been a lot of mounts added to raids, but ever since Cataclysm I haven't really seen many mounts added as dungeon drops. With the implementation of time walking dungeons, there have been mounts such as the Infinite Time Reaver drop as boss drops, which is random, but for specific instances I haven't really seen any rare mounts added as drops, so I'd like to continue adding dungeon boss drops rather than just solely raid boss drops. A lot of people have collected the majority of these mounts, and it'd be nice to add more to new instances to unlock. My final idea might be very controversial, so before you judge the idea, perhaps hear it out for a start. For a class idea, I would add a class called Warder, and the only race that would be able to play it would be a Dragonkin. The Dragonkin would have a special class mount like Worgans, but instead of running on all fours, they would be able to transform into a worm or a dragon. And by worm I don't mean an actual earthworm, I mean a worm as in a dragon, of course. So, like hunters previously had, they would have aspects which would be based upon their spec. The class would be similar to druids in the form that they would have multiple specs. To be balanced in PvP, they would only be able to choose between maybe 2 specs, which would be DPS specs. The specs would include Earth Warder. This would be a tank spec, and the dragon forms would be a black dragon. Time Warder. This would be a DPS spec, and the dragon forms would be a bronze dragon. And finally Dream Warder, which would be a healing spec with a green dragon form. For each spec, the dragon form would be a flying mount, and the class would mainly be a human form, and be able to summon a guardian depending on their spec. They could transform temporarily into a lesser dragonkin rather than a flying one, and this would allow them to unlock different spells as part of the DPS spec. The aspects would be aspect of the black dragonfly, aspect of the bronze dragonfly, and aspect of the green dragonfly, which would be given depending on the spec of course, and give stat bonuses whilst activated. This would be a hero class, and I would implement it sometime after the defeat of the Burning Legion, or when the threat died down once again. I would centre the hero class around the time when old gods become the main threat once again, and the dragonflights become more important as well. The class would start at a very high level, and the starting zone would be with the main dragon aspects as the quest givers, and preparing you for battle as the starting zone is attacked by old god minions, or something of that kind. Thanks for watching the video. If you want more in-depth videos of any of the individual ideas I presented here, feel free to comment below saying so, as I'm willing to go more in depth on any of these ideas I talked about. Because this is a long video, I can't always go in depth to, the bare bones specifics of certain ideas, so I'm willing to make an individual video on each if you're very intrigued. If you made it to the end, thanks so much for watching, and tell me below that you made it to the end so I know. Also, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like and make sure you subscribe in order to not miss any other WoW videos as well as my lore videos. Thanks for watching.